My name is Avery Jiang, and for almost 2 years, I was paid to be a ghost in someone else's love story. If you are watching this, if you have ever stayed in a place where your heart was bleeding but your feet refused to move, then maybe you already know how my story begins. I was the secretary and the secret lover of Julian Cole, the CEO of Cole Global Holdings, a man whose name could move markets in Manhattan with a single email. He never promised me love. I never asked for it. On paper, the terms were simple. I gave him my time, my silence, my body, and a version of my heart that I pretended not to need. In return, he gave me money enough to keep my mother breathing in a private hospital room overlooking the East River. But behind those terms, there was something uglier, something I never said out loud. Everyone believed I was just a stand-in for his first love, Serena Thorne, the legendary white moonlight who had left him, left New York, left the country years ago. Everyone said I looked like her. Everyone said he had a type. Everyone said I was a replacement. Tell me, if you heard that about yourself every day, would it start to sound like the truth? Or would you fight it? Would you stay in a relationship built on a lie you secretly believed because you had no better option? Or would you walk away and risk losing the person you love most in this world, your mother? If that were your choice, what would you do? I really want to know. Because I know what I did. I stayed while my coworkers whispered in the hallway after I walked past. I stayed while the tabloids printed blurry photos of Julian and a woman who looked suspiciously like Serena, leaving his penthouse late at night. A woman who was actually me. I stayed while my heart learned to breathe in shallow little gasps, never too deep, because deep breaths are for people who think they're safe. I was never safe. The thing about being the replacement is that you are always waiting for the original to return. You live with a countdown you cannot see. The cruelest part, nobody tells you what number it started on. You just wake up one day and realize the ticking has always been there. Behind each voicemail, each bouquet, each careless kiss in the back of a town car. This episode, this story I am telling you now, is the day the countdown hit 0. But to make sense of that day, we have to go back to the beginning, back to the contract. I never signed on paper, but sealed anyway with my own desperation. So listen to me carefully, and tell me in the comments if at any point you want to scream at me to run. I won't be offended. I just want you to be honest. More honest than I was with myself. 2 years earlier, I was 26, exhausted, and broke in a way that did not show on my bank app as much as it showed in my bones. By day, I was already working as a junior assistant in Cole Global's legal department, printing endless contracts I would never be important enough to sign. By night, I slept in a tiny walk-up in Queens that smelled like someone else's cooking oil and shared a bathroom with 3 other women. The only expensive thing in my life was the hospital, where my mother lay hooked up to machines that sighed and beeped in an uneven lullaby. She had a rare autoimmune condition that liked to pretend it was mercifully stable, right, until the moment it tried to kill her again. The meds that kept it in check might as well have been made of crushed diamonds for how much they cost. Insurance covered some of it for a while, until it did not. You do not have to tell me the truth, she had whispered once, fingers thin but still stubborn on my wrist, when she saw the shadows under my eyes deepen. Just promise me you are not doing anything you will regret. I had smiled at her then, the way daughters smile when they are already halfway over the cliff, too far down to climb back up. I am just working overtime, Mom, I said. You know, New York? It eats you if you slow down. Do you ever lie to protect someone you love, knowing deep down you are really protecting yourself from seeing their disappointment? Because that is what I was doing. I was not lying to protect her health. I was lying to protect the version of me reflected in her eyes, the version who was still good. The first time Julian Cole really saw me, actually looked at me, not just past me, it was after a 14-hour day. The board meeting had run long. The legal team had been dragged in to revise language on a cross-border acquisition that would decide the fate of 1,000 jobs overseas. I had stayed behind to clean up the conference room. I remember the smell of burnt coffee and cold air conditioning, the way the city lights bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the glass conference table into a mirror for the sky. He walked back in alone. No entourage, tie loosened, dark hair, slightly mussed, the cautious control he wore in front of directors, replaced by something quieter, more tired. Julian Cole looked like the sort of man who had been born in a custom suit. Broad shoulders, straight nose, a scar near his temple that you could miss if you did not look closely, like someone had once tried to cut the perfect out of him and failed. His eyes landed on me, and I felt every particle of dust in the room freeze. "You are still here," he said. Not a question. More like an observation. "Yes, mister." "Cole," I replied. I kept my gaze at the level of his collarbone, because that was how you survived in this building. You never reached too high, not even with your eyes. "I am just finishing cleanup." He walked to the window instead of the door, hands in his pockets, shoulders a little bowed like the glass was the only thing holding him up. The city spread out beneath him, like another one of his assets. "What is your name?" he asked. Nobody ever asked my name in this company unless they needed something typed. "Avery," I said. "Avery Jiang. You have been here." "What, a year?" he asked, still not looking at me. It unnerved me that he knew that much. "A year and 3 months, sir. Legal assistant. Columbia grad. Full scholarship. Minor in economics, right?" Now, I was staring at him before I could stop myself. "How did you?" He finally looked at me then, and something in his gaze made me feel like I would just been cataloged, assessed, and sorted into a category even I did not know existed. "I read the reports," he said simply. "I like to know the people who work for me." That was a lie. I knew even then it had to be a lie. Men like him did not memorize the resumes of junior assistants. That should have been my first warning. Whatever he wanted from me was not normal. But back then, I was still in the phase of my life where attention from powerful men felt like a door opening instead of a trap closing. He walked closer, stopping at the other end of the table. The glass between us reflected him over me, our silhouettes layered, ghosting each other. "You are efficient," he said. "You stayed late every night this week. You handled the last-minute contract print when the copier crashed on Tuesday. You corrected a decimal on the Argentina deal that saved us a few $1,000,000. My face flushed. "That was just luck," I murmured. "It was math," he replied. "Luck does not move decimal points." His gaze dropped briefly to my face, lingered in a way that made my skin prickle. There was a flicker there. Recognition, almost surprise, like he saw something familiar and unwanted. For a second, confusion crossed his features. "You," he began, then cut himself off. "Never mind." "Are you looking for a promotion, Avery? This is the moment I sometimes replay when I cannot sleep. 1,000 different answers spinning in a carousel of what-ifs. If I had said no, would everything that followed still have happened? Or did the story begin long before that, and I was just walking a path already laid out for me by someone else's choices? I forced a smile. I would be happy just to keep my job, sir. Honest? He mused. Or just careful. In this building, those are the same thing, I said, and then wanted to bite my tongue. His mouth curved. Not quite a smile, but not displeased either. Come to the 39th floor tomorrow at 8, he said. Ask for me. I work on 31 with legal, I replied. You do today, he said. Tomorrow, you will be my executive assistant. HR will handle the paperwork. It took me a second to remember how breathing worked. Why me? The question fell out before I could censor it. His eyes flicked over my face again, an almost imperceptible tightening around his jaw. Because I need someone competent who does not talk too much, he said. And because you need something, too. My heart stuttered. What do you mean? Your mother is at St. Augustine's, right? He asked casually, as if he were inquiring about the weather. Autoimmune degenerative. Experimental treatments. Insurance recently cut coverage. You picked up a second job last month at a cafe in Queens, but quit after 3 weeks when your schedule here got heavier. My hands were cold around the stack of stapled documents I was holding. You had me investigated. He did not flinch. I have every key employee investigated, he said. The difference is, I actually read your file. Shame and rage tangled in my chest like barbed wire. So you know, I am desperate, I said softly, and that makes me useful to you. Desperation makes people focused, he replied. They do not waste time. He took out a card, scribbled a number on the back, and slid it across the glass toward me. 39th floor, 8 of the clock. Or you can walk out of this building and never speak to me again. Your choice, Avery. He paused, then added, but if you stay, I will make sure your mother gets the treatment she needs. No questions, no delays. I have connections at St. Augustine's, and I own a controlling stake in the pharmaceutical company that produces one of the drugs on her protocol. My fingers twitched above the card, hovering, not touching. And what do you want in return, mister? Coal? His eyes lowered to my mouth for half a second. The air between us shifted. He did not dress it up. He did not call it fate, or romance, or destiny. Your time, he said, voice low. Your discretion. Your loyalty in the office. And outside of it, there it was. No flowers. No promises. Just a transaction laid bare under fluorescent light. So I would be your assistant during the day, and your... What, at night? I asked, my throat dry. He did not look away. My companion, he said. My lover. Whatever word makes it easier for you to breathe. What if I say no? I whispered. Then your mother's doctors will keep doing their best with what they have, he said. And you will keep fighting alone. You might still win. People do. But it will be harder, much harder. If you were me, standing in that room, with the entire glittering city behind him and your mother's heartbeat tied to numbers in a billing system somewhere, would you have said no? Would you have walked away from the one person who had just casually revealed he could bend your worst nightmare into something survivable? Or would you have done what I did, reach for the card with hands that would not stop shaking? Tell me honestly. If this were your mother, your family, your life, what price would you put on your own dignity? How much of yourself would you sell to keep the person you love alive? I took the card. The next morning, I stepped onto the 39th floor and walked into a different version of hell. Being Julian's executive assistant meant my world narrowed to the span of his calendar, his moods, his whims. I learned his preferences faster than I had learned any subject in school. How he took his coffee black before 9 with a splash of oat milk after. How he liked his reports, printed, tabbed, and color-coded. How he needed the room to feel before a meeting, cool, quiet, controlled. The whispers started before the first week was over. She looks like her, right? I overheard one of the senior managers murmur near the elevators, not even bothering to lower his voice. Like Serena. Same jawline. Same eyes. Julian has a type, another replied. You know how it is. Men like that never get over their first love. They just recreate her. Recreate. As if I were some 3D model printed from another woman's blueprints. I could have pretended it did not bother me. I did, in fact, pretend for about 5 seconds. Then I went into the bathroom, stared at my own face in the mirror, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if my reflection belonged to me. That night, Julian took me to his penthouse for the first time. The elevator opened directly into his world, a space of glass, stone, and subtle luxury, all clean lines and muted colors. Somewhere in the kitchen, his house system hummed as it adjusted the lights. The city stretched out on all sides, blinking and alive. You are tense, he observed, shrugging off his jacket. I am in my boss's penthouse in a dress I cannot afford, about to cross a line I cannot uncross, I replied. Tense seems reasonable. He walked toward me slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. Last chance, Avery, he said softly. You can leave right now. I will still transfer the funds for your mother's treatment tomorrow. Consider it a signing bonus. No strings. I did not believe him. Not entirely. Powerful men did not give away money without a reason. But the fact that he even said it made something inside me tilt. Why me? I asked again. Do not say it is because I am efficient. His jaw clenched. For a moment, a shadow passed over his features, something wounded and sharp. You are not her, he said quietly. That is why. Her, I did not need a name. In every office gossip thread, in every whispered conversation, there was only one her that could make his face look like that. Serena Thorne. People say I look like her, I said. They say I am a replacement. The word tasted like blood and metal. Julian's gaze hardened. People say a lot of things, he replied. Most of them are cowards who have never built anything with their own hands. Do you believe them? Do you ever notice how the most dangerous questions do not sound dangerous at all? They sound casual, almost gentle, right? Until you realize your entire life is balancing on your answer. It does not matter what I believe, I said finally. It only matters what you see when you look at me. Silence stretched between us like wire. I see someone who has more spine than sense, he said at last. Someone who is pretending this is just about money. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I see someone who still has a choice. You can leave, Avery. Or you can stay and accept that this will be complicated and unfair and maybe the only way out of the mess your life is in. And you, I asked. What do you accept? That I want you, he answered simply, for however long you will let me have you. It was not a declaration of love. It was not even a promise of anything beyond the next few months. But my mother's face flashed in my mind, pale under hospital lights, lips curved in a stubborn smile. I thought of the bills piled on my kitchen table, the notices, the way the nurse had said, if we cannot secure the next round of treatment, MS, Jiang, we may have to... I shut that memory down. I stepped forward until I was close enough to feel the heat radiating off his body. Then I will stay, I said. For now, I wish I could tell you I had some grand strategy, some secret plan to leverage this arrangement into something less humiliating. I did not. I was just a woman, standing in front of the storm, bargaining for an umbrella. The months that followed blurred into a rhythm of emails, meetings, car rides, and nights in his penthouse. He kept his word. A quiet phone call, a signed document, and suddenly my mother had access to treatments the hospital had previously called logistically impossible. Her condition stabilized. She even regained some strength. Every time I saw color return to her face, I told myself the cost was worth it. I told myself that dignity was a luxury for people who were not fighting death on a payment schedule. And yet, every time I heard Serena's name in the halls, a little part of me died anyway. 1 year into our arrangement, I met his mother. Eleanor Cole had the kind of presence that made you straighten your spine without realizing it. She wore her silver hair swept back, her jewelry understated but expensive, her eyes sharp and amused. She came into the office unannounced one afternoon, striding past reception like she owned not only the building, but gravity itself. "Where is my son?" she demanded, and then her gaze landed on me. She stopped. "You must be Avery," she said. My throat closed. "Yes, Miss Cole," I managed. "I am Mr. Cole's assistant." "And?" she asked, one eyebrow arching. I froze. And his girlfriend," she added lightly, eyes twinkling. My face went hot. "No, madam, please," she interrupted, waving a hand. "I was married to a man like my son for 35 years. I know what it looks like. When one of them has finally found a woman, he refuses to let out of his sight. He hires based on competence," I said weakly. "Oh, darling," she laughed. "Do you think those men separate their appetites that neatly?" She reached out, taking my hand before I could pull back, her fingers warm and surprisingly gentle. "Come to dinner tonight," she said. "Julian can pretend it is a business thing if it makes him feel better. But I want to talk to you without him brooding in the corner like a gargoyle." "I do not know if that is appropriate," I replied. "Appropriate is a word invented by men who want to control the narrative," she said briskly. "You are seeing my son. He is too emotionally constipated to call it that yet, but he is... I like to meet the women in his life who actually matter." The word matter hit something fragile in my chest. Matter, not replacement, not stand in. My mother is in the hospital," I blurted out, grasping for an excuse. "I usually visit her after work." "Then bring your mother," she said without missing a beat. "Street?" Augustine's, right? I will have the car pick you both up. We will do a quiet dinner at my place. No press, no board members. Just family. Family. It should have sounded like a promise. To me, it sounded like a trap. That night, I sat in Eleanor's dining room, watching my mother smile more than she had in months, as Eleanor asked her questions about China, about food, about the books she used to teach. Julian sat at the head of the table, tense but silent, like a man watching two explosives being passed back and forth in a game of catch. After dessert, Eleanor pulled out a small velvet box and slid it across the table toward me. "This was my grandmother's," she said. "I have been holding on to it for the woman who would calm my son." Inside was a bracelet of delicate white gold and small diamonds, the kind of piece that whispered old money instead of shouting new Mrs. Cole? "I can't accept this," I protested immediately. "Of course you can," she said. "You already did the hard part. You got past his defenses. The rest is just logistics." "Logistics," I echoed faintly. "The wedding," she said. "The house in the Hamptons. The grandchildren. Those are all just details." I nearly dropped the bracelet. "Wedding, Mrs. Cole, Julian and I. Our relationship is not proper," she supplied dryly. "Official, recognized," she snorted. "You are young. You still think labels change reality. They do not. My son is a difficult man. He does not bring women into his daily life, unless they are either a problem or a solution. You, my dear, are clearly not a problem." My mother watched me over her teacup, eyes shining. "Avery," she said softly in Mandarin, "this is a blessing." I wanted to tell her there were no blessings built on lies. I wanted to remind her that our entire arrangement began with a negotiation between my desperation and his power. But my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. Julian's gaze caught mine across the table, unreadable. He said nothing to correct his mother. He said nothing to explain to her that I was not his fiancée, not his girlfriend, not even officially his anything. His silence hummed between us like a siren only I could hear. Later, when we were alone in his car, the city lights streaking by like falling stars, I finally asked, "Why did not you tell her the truth?" "About what?" he asked. "Eyes on the road." "About us?" I said. "About what we are and what we are not." "What are we, Avery?" he asked quietly. My hands curled in my lap. "You tell me, Julian. Am I your assistant, your lover, your replacement Serena?" His hands tightened on the wheel. The car's interior seemed to shrink. "Do not say her name," he said. "Why not?" I snapped, anger flaring past my usual caution. "Everyone else in this city does." "I do not," he replied. "Not anymore." "But you do not deny that I look like her," I pressed. "You do not deny that everyone thinks I am just enough," he cut in sharply. "You are not her." "Then what am I?" I asked again, my voice cracking. "You are mine," he said simply. For as long as you choose to be. It should have sounded possessive, oppressive, even. Instead, it landed somewhere deep in my chest, where lonely girls store their fantasies. I hated that it soothed me. I hated that it was almost enough. Almost. Tell me, if a man told you that you are mine, for as long as you choose to be, would you hear the trap or the promise? Would you stay because you believe you can control the exit? Or would you leave because you know you never could? I stayed. Of course, I stayed. And then Serena came back to New York. That was the night my illusion finally started to crack. It began with an email blast from the PR department. Cole Global Holdings would be hosting a high-profile charity gala in partnership with Thorne Biotech, a rising pharmaceutical company whose founder's daughter, Serena Thorne, had just returned from Europe. The email came with a glossy press photo. I opened it at my desk between calendar invites, not expecting anything except another corporate announcement. The image loaded slowly, pixel by pixel, like a wound reopening. A woman looked back at me from the screen, tall, elegant, with long, dark hair swept over one shoulder, a slim gown skimming her frame. Her eyes were a shade lighter than mine, her jawline a little sharper, but the resemblance was unmistakable. It was like looking into a mirror from an alternate universe, where I had been born into money instead of debt. She is back, one of the marketing girls whispered as she walked past my desk, not realizing I could hear. Julian's White Moonlight. The original? What do you think will happen to the stand-in? Another replied. I did not need to ask who the stand-in was. I was right there, breathing, trying not to choke on my own heartbeat. That night, Julian came into my office after everyone else had left. His tie was already loosened, his hair slightly disheveled, his expression more closed off than usual. He did not say hello. He just dropped a black velvet box on my desk. Wear this to the gala, he said. I opened it with numb fingers. Inside, nested in satin, was a gown the color of midnight deep navy, almost black, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light. It was elegant without being ostentatious, the kind of dress that transformed a woman into a secret. You want me to attend? I asked, my voice shaking. You are my assistant, he said. And my date. The word date hit me like a slap and a caress at the same time. People will talk, I said. They already do, he replied. This changes nothing. Serena will be there, I said, forcing the name between us. His jaw flexed, but he did not look away. Yes. And I pushed. And nothing, he said. Thorne Biotech is a strategic partner for the orphan drug program that could benefit patients like your mother. Her family's company has something we need. That is all. So this is just business, I said. It is always business, he replied. Until it is not. That was not an answer. But it was the only one I was going to get. The night of the gala, the hotel ballroom shone like someone had bottled a piece of the Milky Way and poured it into the chandeliers. Waiters drifted through the crowd with silver trays, laughter and clinking glass echoing off marble and glass. I stood at Julian's side in the midnight gown, my hand tucked lightly into the crook of his arm, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Eyes followed us as we entered. Some were curious, some calculating, some outright cruel. Is that her? She looks almost exactly like Serena. Julian really did not even change the template, did he? I smiled with my lips and not my eyes, the way I had taught myself to do around people who thought they knew my story. Then, across the room, I saw her. Serena Thorne was laughing at something a board member said, her head tilted back slightly, her hand resting on the arm of a younger woman. I recognized from the gossip blogs as her sister, Tessa. When Serena's gaze finally slid across the room and met mine, her smile did not falter. It just sharpened. She excused herself from her conversation and walked toward us, Tessa trailing behind like a prettier, meaner echo. "Julian," Serena said when she reached us, her voice smooth as glass. "You are late." "Traffic," he replied calmly. "Serena." "Tessa." "You could have called," she said lightly, then turned her attention to me. For a moment, she just looked. I had never understood what it meant to feel stripped without being touched, until that moment. Her gaze traveled from my hair to my shoes, cataloging everything, filing it under categories. Only she understood. "And you must be—" she began. Julian's arm tensed under my hand. "Avery," he said quickly. "My executive assistant." "And," Tessa added with a sing-song lilt, eyes gleaming. Serena's lips curved, "and something more, I imagine," she said. "The resemblance is uncanny." "To whom?" I asked. My voice, polite, almost bored. My heart was beating so fast. My fingers tingled, but I refused to let it show. If I was going to be compared, I would at least force them to say her name. Serena's smile widened. To me, of course, she said, "You did not tell her, Julian, how flattering. You really went out and found my reflection." Around us, the nearby conversations quieted, just enough for the humiliation to carry. "Serena," Julian said warningly, "do not—" "What?" she asked innocently. "I am complimenting your taste. Clearly, it has not changed." Tessa giggled. "She is like a budget version," she said. "Cute, though. Maybe that is the appeal? Less risk, less maintenance." My fingers dug into Julian's sleeve. For a split second, I considered walking away, straight out of the ballroom, out of the hotel, out of this entire life. But then I thought of my mother. I thought of Eleanor and her bracelet. I thought of the late-night whispers in the hallways of Cole Global. No. If they wanted a silent replacement, they chose the wrong woman. "You are right," I said calmly, turning my gaze on Tessa. "There is a difference between us." She blinked, thrown off by the fact that I had spoken at all. "Oh, yes," I said sweetly. "She is the one who left?" I nodded toward Serena. "I am the one who stayed." The air around us tightened like a noose. For the first time since she walked over, Serena's smile slipped. "Just a fraction, but enough?" "Excuse me," she said softly. "You heard me," I replied. "Whatever history you and Julian had, it is in the past. You walked away from it. That was your right, but do not walk back into his life and treat the people who are here now like placeholders." I let the word hang between us like a blade. You do not get to own a man forever just because you knew him first. Julian's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. Serena's eyes went flat and cold. "You are bold," she said, "for a replacement." "Say that word again," Julian said, his voice dropping into a register that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Serena glanced at him, a flicker of something like hurt crossing her expression before she masked it with a smirk. "Did I hit a nerve?" she asked. "You always did like strays." "Enough," he said. "Walk away." "Serena, before you say something you can't take back." "Oh, I have not even started," she said softly. "This is just the welcome back party." She leaned in slightly, her perfume a cloud of something expensive and suffocating. "Enjoy the gala, Avery," she whispered in my ear. "Try not to get too attached to The View, replacements usually have short contracts. She pulled back, her smile bright and poisonous, and drifted away into the crowd, Tessa following, both of them laughing at some joke that had my name as the punchline. I stood there, my heart hammering, my cheeks hot, my fingers still clenched around Julian's arm. "You should not have talked to her like that," he said quietly. For a second, I thought he was scolding me, and humiliation flared. "I am sorry," I said stiffly. "I forgot my place." "No," he replied. "You forgot that she is dangerous." He turned, lifting my chin gently with his fingers, forcing me to meet his eyes. There was something fierce in his gaze, something protective and furious. "Do not ever let her get that close to you again," he said. "If she tries, you find me." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because you are my responsibility," he said. "No one touches what is mine." The words should have comforted me. Instead, they made my skin prickle. Because if I was his, then my heart, my pain, my humiliation all belonged to him too. And yet, he still had not answered the question that mattered most. What exactly was I to him when the lights were off and the white moonlight came home? After the gala, everything changed. Or maybe everything just finally showed its true face. Julian became quieter, more distant in the office, more unpredictable at night. His temper shortened. His phone buzzed constantly. I pretended not to notice the calls he did not take when I was around, or the ones he stepped out into the hallway for. But pretending does not stop the truth from existing. It only delays the impact. The gossip in the company spread like ink in water. Serena Thorne was officially back in New York, taking over as VP of Thorne Biotech's strategic partnerships. Every department that dealt with them was suddenly reviewing collaboration terms. Translation, Julian was working with her again. Every time I saw her name in an email thread, my stomach twisted like it was learning a new kind of pain. One morning, while refilling the coffee machine in the executive pantry, I overheard two junior analysts whispering. "Did you hear?" one said. "Cole Global and Thorne Biotech might merge next quarter." "They say Julian and Serena are negotiating directly?" "Of course they are," the other replied. "It is poetic, is not it? Old flames, old money, one empire." "What about his assistant, the stand-in, she will be gone by Christmas?" They laughed softly, and I smiled like a woman who had not just been gutted alive. Tell me if you overheard people casually predicting your expiration date. Would you walk out and quit? Or would you stay to prove them wrong? Which choice hurts less? A week later, Julian and Serena had their first joint press conference. I was there, standing off stage with the other executives. Cameras flashed. Microphones caught every polished word. Serena looked immaculate in white, her tone confident, her smile weaponized. Julian stood beside her, expression unreadable, answering questions about synergy and shared vision. When a reporter asked about their personal rapport, Serena laughed lightly. "Julian and I have known each other for years," she said. "Some connections never really fade." The room chuckled. I did not. That night, when we got back to the penthouse, I waited until the door closed before asking, "Was that necessary?" He loosened his tie, exhaled. "What? Letting her imply that you are still involved?" "She did not imply anything," he said. "She manipulated the narrative," I snapped. "And you let her?" I'll let her talk, he replied, voice icy. That is different. Not to the world watching, I said. Not to me. Avery, he said, rubbing a hand over his face. You knew what this was from the beginning. I knew I was your assistant, I said. Your companion, not your PR shield. You are not a shield, he said quietly. Then what am I, Julian? Be honest. Right now, with no business excuses? He looked at me, then really looked like he was weighing the risk of telling the truth. You are the only person who makes this life bearable, he said finally. Is that love? I asked. Or dependence? Does it matter? He said. It matters to me. He turned away. Then maybe you should decide if this is still what you want. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. I slept in the guest room that night for the first time. 2 weeks later, Serena invited the entire executive board to a private dinner to celebrate the milestone partnership. I was not on the guest list, but Julian asked me to attend anyway. I want you there, he said simply. Why? I asked. Optics. That single word was a blade. Still, I went. The restaurant was one of those places that did not have a name on the door, just a scent of truffle oil and money. Serena and her sister Tessa were already seated when we arrived. Avery, Serena said sweetly as I took my seat. So glad you could join us. I did not realize executive assistants made the guest list now. Only the indispensable ones. I said, Oh, I am sure, she replied. Julian always did appreciate efficiency. Among other things. Serena, Julian warned under his breath. Relax, she said with a laugh. We are all adults here. No need to pretend this is not. Unconventional. The other guests smiled awkwardly. Tessa leaned forward, her tone syrupy. You really do look like my sister. You know, it is uncanny. Does it ever bother you? Living in someone else's shadow, I smiled tightly. No, I said. Shadows only exist when there is light. The table went quiet. Julian's hand brushed mine under the table for half a second, a silent apology, or maybe gratitude. I was not sure which. But later that night, as we left the restaurant, I caught sight of Serena watching us from the doorway, her expression unreadable. A week later, my mother's condition worsened. Her doctor said the experimental drug she would been responding to was suddenly unavailable due to a supply issue. I spent hours on the phone with pharmacies, hospitals, and insurance reps, hitting the same wall every time. When I finally told Julian, he looked almost guilty. I will handle it, he said. How? Just trust me? That is what people say right before they break you, I said bitterly. Avery, please, I cut him off. Just tell me the truth. Do you know what happened to that drug? He hesitated a fraction too long. Julian, I said softly, is this connected to Serena? His silence was answer enough. I stood, my voice shaking. You let her control my mother's medication. It is temporary, he said. She is using it to leverage the deal. If you play along, I repeated. You mean marry her? His jaw tightened. You do not understand. Then explain it, I demanded. Because right now, it looks like you are selling me out to save face. I am protecting you, he said. From what? I cried. From the truth, he slammed his hand against the wall, eyes dark. Or from losing everything I already have, I whispered. That night, I resigned. No confrontation, No drama, just a printed letter, and my access badge left on his desk. I packed my things into a cardboard box and left before sunrise. The city felt colder that morning, like it had finally decided to stop pretending to care. Tell me, have you ever walked away from someone while still loving them? It is not bravery. It is self-preservation with better PR. 2 days later, Julian's assistant, his new assistant, showed up at my apartment with an envelope. Inside were hospital documents and a note in his handwriting. Your mother's treatment has resumed. The supply issue is resolved. Do not contact me until the wedding. The wedding? Of course, the press release went out that same day. Cole Global and Thorne Biotech announce merger through the engagement of CEO Julian Cole and Serena Thorne. The accompanying photo showed them smiling under soft lighting, his hand on her waist. The caption might as well have said, "The replacement has been replaced." I wanted to hate him. I tried, but hate requires distance, and he still lived under my skin. My mother, recovering slowly, noticed my silence. "Avery," she said one evening, "you should go to his wedding." I almost dropped her teacup. "What? Not to bless him," she said calmly. "To see the truth with your own eyes. People reveal who they are when they think you are gone." I laughed through the ache. "You sound like Eleanor." "Smart women sound the same," she said. So I went, dressed in black, sitting in the last row of the Cole Estate's sprawling garden. Cameras flashed. Violins played. Serena was radiant in white. Julian was pale and unreadable. When the officiant began to speak, I noticed movement near the back federal agents, subtle but unmistakable. And then I understood. Eleanor had told me once that her son never fought a losing battle. This was not a wedding. It was a setup. Moments later, a man in a dark suit stepped forward, flashed a badge, and the ceremony dissolved into chaos. Agents surrounded the Thorne family. Someone shouted about tax evasion and offshore accounts. Serena froze, her bouquet slipping from her hand. "Julian," she hissed, realizing too late. "You used me." "No," he said coldly. "You used yourself." She lunged toward me then, fury twisting her perfect face. "You!" she screamed. "You think you have won?" I barely had time to react before she grabbed a champagne knife from a table. Everything happened too fast. Julian stepping between us, the blade flashing, the gasp from the crowd. And then blood. The world tilted. Someone called 911. Eleanor's voice broke through the noise. Serena was restrained, screaming, mascara streaked. Julian was on the ground, his hand pressed to his side, his eyes locking on mine. "Avery," he said weakly, do not cry." I did not realize I was crying until his blood touched my skin. Later, in the hospital, the machines beeped in steady rhythm again, just like my mother's had. When he finally woke up, I was there. "You are an idiot," I said softly. "You should have let me get stabbed." "Not an option," he murmured. "You are mine." I laughed wetly, still possessive, even bleeding. "Always," he said, eyes closing briefly. Then, quietly, "You were never a replacement." My breath caught. "You loved her," I said. "Once, maybe, but not like this," he replied. "She was the idea of love. You are the reality." He reached for my hand. "Marry me?" "You are delirious," I said. "I am serious," he replied. "No contracts. No bargains. Just us. And if I say no, then I will wait until you say yes." He smiled faintly. "You always do." The next spring, we married in a small ceremony. No press, no board members, no ghosts. My mother walked me down the aisle. Eleanor cried quietly in the front row. When Julian said "I do," I believed him. Because this time, there was no transaction left to hide behind. Just love. And the scar where he had proved it. Do you think people like us, people who made choices out of desperation, deserve happy endings? Or do we just get lucky once in a lifetime and call it redemption? I used to think stories ended with weddings. Now I know better. Stories do not end with vows. They just change battlefield. A year after our quiet spring wedding, I woke up in a Manhattan penthouse that was technically mine and realized something strange. I was no longer the ghost in someone else's love story. I was the headline, the former mistress, the replacement, the executive assistant who married the billionaire she once worked for, while his ex-fiancé awaited trial on felony charges. You can imagine how kind the internet was about that. If you have ever scrolled through comments about a woman you know is trying to survive, you know exactly what I mean. If you have ever been that woman, then maybe this part is for you. Tell me honestly, have you ever been judged by strangers who only knew one chapter of your life and decided they were qualified to write your ending? Because that is what it felt like every single day. Gold digger, homewrecker. He nearly died and then married his workplace mistress. What a rom-com for sociopaths. That one went viral. People love clever cruelty. They called me a lot of things. The one word they never used was the truth. Survivor. Our marriage started with stitches and hospital food. Julian still had not fully healed from the stab wound when we signed the papers. Sometimes I joked that he married me under the influence of anesthesia. He would roll his eyes and say, "If I would been any more conscious, I would have married you sooner." Sweet, right? Now imagine hearing that while you are reading a legal brief about how the Thorne family's defense team plans to paint you as the manipulative side piece who destabilized a long-standing engagement and drove a fragile heiress to temporary insanity. Nothing kills romance faster than realizing someone is trying to litigate your existence. After Serena's arrest at the wedding, that was not. The charges escalated beyond just attempted assault. The IRS, the SEC, and half a dozen other three-letter agencies finally did their jobs. Years of tax fraud, shell companies, falsified clinical trial data, it all came out in a slow, sickening drip. Julian had gathered most of the evidence with his own team, feeding it quietly to the authorities until the perfect moment. You might think that made him the hero, and maybe he was, but when rich people fall, they do not fall alone. They pull everyone they can reach down with them, including the woman standing next to the man who helped push me. The first time I realized how far the backlash would go was at a grocery store. Not a fancy one, just the place near our building, where I like to shop in leggings and a sweatshirt, pretending I was still someone whose bank account could overdraft. I was picking up tea for my mother when two girls in their early 20s walked past me, phones out, screens glowing. "No way that is her," one whispered. "The coal wife. The stand in—" I could have kept walking. I should have, but I did not. "You know, I can hear you, right?" I said calmly. They froze. The taller one recovered first. "Sorry," she said in that tone that meant she was not sorry at all. "It is just, we saw your wedding photos online." "Those were not public," I said. "Someone leaked them." "Welcome to marrying a billionaire," the shorter one said, a little icily. "You kind of sign up for that." "Do we?" I asked. "Do women who marry powerful men automatically consent to becoming public property?" They exchanged a look, surprised by the question. "We are just saying," the taller one said defensively, "it is a bad look. His ex-fiancé's in jail because of him, and you were his assistant. That is messy. But I guess you do not care, as long as you are set for life." Her friend snorted. "If someone offered to stab my boyfriend so I could live in a penthouse, I would at least think about it." They laughed. It was supposed to be a joke. It was not. I looked at them, really looked. Two young women who had been taught that other women's misfortunes were punchlines, that men's power was inevitable and women's choices were always corrupt. I saw a younger version of myself in their eyes, hungry, cynical, convinced the game was rigged, so you might as well play dirty. "Come with me," I said abruptly. "What, 10 minutes?" I said, "If you are going to talk about my life, you should at least have the decency to know what you are mocking." I do not know why they followed me out of the aisle and into the little cafe corner at the front of the store. Maybe curiosity, maybe boredom, maybe because nobody ever calls out this behavior directly and they wanted to see what would happen. I told them everything in bullet points: my mother's illness, the job, the offer, the arrangement, the knife, the blood. Not the details that belonged only to Julian and me, but enough to strip the tabloid gloss off the story. When I finished, they looked smaller somehow. "Less certain? Why are you telling us this?" one of them asked quietly. "Because I wonder," I said, "how many of you comment online about women like me without ever asking yourselves what you would do if your mother was dying and the system treated her life as optional? I wonder how many of you think you are better than the women you mock when the only difference between us is timing and opportunity." I leaned back. "So tell me, if someone offered to save your mother's life in exchange for your reputation, what would you pay?" They did not answer. They just left, silent, their phones forgotten in their hands. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. Bone deep tired. That night, I told Julian about it. He listened, his expression tight, his thumb tracing circles over my hand. "They should not have approached you," he said. "We can increase security." "I do not need more security," I said. "I need people to stop thinking they know our story." "That is never going to happen," he said. "Not at our level." "Then maybe we need to change the narrative," I replied. That was how the idea started, not as a PR campaign, not as some calculated image rehabilitation project, but as a simple, stubborn desire to tell my story in my own words. You know how we got here. Me talking to you like this, breaking the fourth wall of my own life. It started with Eleanor. "You cannot win a war you refuse to show up to," she told me one afternoon over tea in her townhouse. Right now, you are letting other people define you. You are playing defense when you should be controlling the board. This is not chess, I said. Sure it is, she replied. The pieces just bleed more. Eleanor had retired from the coal board years ago, but she still understood how power moved. Do you know why people love Serena's version of the story? She asked. Even now, when she is facing trial, because she is rich and beautiful and tragic, I guessed. Because she speaks, Eleanor corrected. Even when she lies, she speaks. You stay silent. Silence makes people nervous. They fill it with whatever suits their worldview. She looked at me over the rim of her cup. You have a brain. You have a spine. You have the moral high ground. Whether you like it or not, use it. What are you suggesting? I asked slowly. That you stop being a rumor and start being a person, she said. Do an interview. Write something. Tell the truth before someone else sells a prettier version of it. Tell the truth. Easy words. Harder execution. Especially when the truth involved your own compromises. If I tell the truth, I said, people will know I agreed to his terms. That I chose him. Chose this. Knowing what it was. Yes, Eleanor said. And some of them will judge you, but some of them will recognize themselves. Those are the ones worth speaking to. That is when the idea solidified. Not just an exclusive interview with some glossy magazine that would twist my words into clickbait, but something raw. A series of video diaries, maybe a long-form interview where I controlled the edits, a narrative in my own voice that did not apologize for existing. People will come after you, Julian warned when I told him. They will dig deeper. They will try to smear you. They already are, I said. At least this way. I am not just sitting here letting it happen. You do not owe anyone an explanation, he said. Maybe not, I said. But I owe something to the girl who was working 3 jobs and still losing. She needs to know she was not weak for making the choices she did. She was human. He studied me for a long moment. I married a hurricane, he said finally. You married a woman who got tired of drowning quietly, I corrected. A month later, I sat in front of a camera in our living room. A simple backdrop behind me. No glam squad. No soft focus lighting. Just me. My hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. A mug of tea in my hands like a shield. My name is Avery Chiang, I began. And you probably think you already know my story. I talked for almost 2 hours. I talked about the hospital, the offer, the arrangement, the guilt. I talked about Serena without demonizing her, because the truth was messy, and I refused to turn her into a one-dimensional villain just to make myself look better. I described her cruelty, honestly, but I also acknowledged the pressure she had grown up under, the expectations, the entitlement that had rotted into something sharper. I talked about Julian, what he had done right, what he had done wrong. I did not excuse him. I did not condemn him to hell on camera either. I let our story sit in the uncomfortable space where real relationships live, between love and power, sacrifice and selfishness. Most importantly, I talked about choice. I made a deal, I said, looking straight into the lens. I chose my mother's life over my own dignity. Maybe you think that was wrong. Maybe you think you would have found another way. I hope you never have to find out. Then I asked the question I had been carrying in my chest for months. If someone told you they could save the person you love most in the world, but it would cost you your reputation, your privacy, and your illusions about what good girls are allowed to do, would you pay? I did not ask for sympathy. I asked for honesty. And honesty scares people more than any scandal. We uploaded the first video on a Sunday night. Within 24 hours, it had over 3 million views. Within 72, it had 10. The comments were exactly what you would expect. A storm? She is just doing damage control. This is so manipulative. Wait, am I actually sympathizing with her? My mom died because we could not afford treatment. If someone had offered me what she got, I would have taken it. I do not care what anyone says. I was a caregiver too. I did worse things for less money. I am not proud, but I understand. Thread after thread, the conversation shifted, not entirely, not cleanly, but enough that for every person who called me trash, another replied, maybe actually listen to what she is saying. Of course, the Thorn legal team hated it. They filed motions claiming my videos were poisoning the jury pool and defaming Serena. Our lawyers countered that everything I said was either already on public record or clearly labeled opinion. The judge allowed the videos to stay up, with a warning that any deliberate lies would be punished. I was not lying. That was the point. The more I spoke, the harder it became for other people to twist the narrative completely. Did that stop them from trying? Of course not. That is when Tessa Serena's sister decided to make her move. Out of the entire Thorn family, she was the one I worried about most. Serena was impulsive, reckless. Tessa was cold and precise. If Serena was a knife, Tessa was a scalpel. She requested a meeting through her lawyer off the record, allegedly to discuss a civil settlement. Julian refused at first. She is baiting you, he said. She wants to rattle you before the trial. Then let her try, I said. I am done being scared of women who underestimate me. We met in a private conference room in a midtown hotel. No cameras, no lawyers inside, just one security guard outside the door. Tessa arrived exactly on time, dressed in a sleek black suit, her hair in a perfect chignon. She looked like a magazine spread about revenge dressing, how to intimidate your enemies in court. Avery, she said, settling into the chair opposite me. Or do you prefer Miss Cole now? Avery is fine, I said. Titles make people lazy. Her lips twitched. I see why he likes you. He does not like me, I replied. He married me? For now, she said. Things change. Like your family's net worth, I asked sweetly. Her eyes flashed, but she recovered quickly. You are getting comfortable, she observed. Dangerous habit. You should be careful. You are only standing because my sister is falling. I am standing, I said, because I refuse to fall with her. You refuse to stay in your place, she said. Julian was supposed to marry Serena. That was the plan. Your plan, I corrected. Not his. She leaned forward, voice low. Do you have any idea what you have done? My sister is facing years in prison. My parents' life's work is in ruins. Our investors are fleeing. Our name is mud. Your sister tried to kill me, I said evenly. She committed fraud. She endangered patients. Actions have consequences. Do not preach to me about consequences, Tessa snapped. You think you are clean in all this? You are the mistress who became the wife. The narrative only works because you play the penitent sinner. You step 1 inch out of line and they will eat you alive. They already tried, I said. I am still here. For now, she repeated, an ugly smile curving her mouth. But reputations are like glass. One crack, and the whole thing shatters. She slid an envelope across the table. I brought you a little insurance policy. Inside were glossy photos. Me and Julian, in the early days of our arrangement. Blurred angles, telephoto shots, hotel entrances, car doors. Nothing explicitly incriminating, no nudity, no sex, but enough to be suggestive, enough to confirm the timeline people love to speculate about. You leak those. You prove my entire story. I said that I was his mistress, while his ex-fiancé still thought they were getting married. You think that helps you? I think it reminds people what you are, she said. I think it makes them less likely to believe your little redemption arc. I laughed, surprising both of us. You think I am trying to redeem myself? I asked. I am not. I am just telling the truth. If I wanted redemption, I would hire a ghostwriter and put a halo on my head. Then why do all this? She demanded. The videos, the interviews, the sob story. Because there is a girl out there watching the circus, I said, who thinks she deserves every bad thing that happens to her because she made one desperate choice. I am talking to her, not to you. I pushed the photos back across the table. Leak them if you want, I said. I will just confirm they are real. I won't even flinch. You know why? Because I have already said worse about myself on camera than any of your tabloids could. For the first time, Tessa looked uncertain. You can't win this, she said. There is no win here, I replied. There is just surviving with enough of yourself intact that you can still look in the mirror. I stood. Tell Serena I said hi, I added, and that I hope someday she realizes the person who ruined her life was not me. It was the version of herself she refused to outgrow. That was the moment I realized season 2 of my life was not about revenge. It was about reclamation, reclaiming my story, my choices, my future. The trial went on for months. I testified. I answered questions about nights I wanted to forget, deals I wished I had never been part of. The defense tried to paint me as manipulative, a gold digger, a liar. The prosecution countered with documents, timelines, data. The jury watched. The world watched. Julian watched me every time I took the stand with an expression I had never seen on his face in the boardroom. Fear. Not for himself, for me. When the guilty verdict finally came, the world reacted the way it always does. Memes, think pieces, debates on morning shows about ethics and women's choices. People moved on to the next scandal. That is the thing about public outrage. It has the attention span of a goldfish. But the people whose lives were actually wrecked do not get to move on as quickly. We had to rebuild. Julian rebuilt Cole Global with stricter oversight and more transparency than any of his competitors. Eleanor came out of retirement temporarily, just to terrify the board into not screwing up. My mother's condition stabilized again, then improved. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future where she would be there to see her grandchildren. Me, I rebuilt myself, piece by piece. I kept recording, not just about the scandal, but about the quiet, unglamorous realities of healing. About therapy, about nightmares that smelled like antiseptic and blood, about loving a man who had been both my savior and my biggest mistake, and choosing to stay anyway, not because I was trapped, but because I decided the version of him who fought beside me was worth the one who once tried to control my story. One of my most watched videos was not about money or betrayal or courtrooms. It was about forgiveness. Forgiveness, I said into the camera, is not saying, "It is okay that you hurt me." It is saying, "I refuse to let the hurt you caused be the thing that defines the rest of my life." Sometimes you forgive people and keep them in your life. Sometimes you forgive people and never speak to them again. Sometimes you never manage to forgive at all, and that is okay too. You are not a failure for having a scar that still aches when it rains. I did not name Serena. I did not have to. People asked in the comments, "Would you ever forgive her?" I answered honestly. "I do not know," I said. Some days I hope she rots in prison. Some days I wonder who she might have been if she had not been raised to believe she was entitled to everything. Both of those feelings can exist in the same person. And you, if someone tried to destroy you out of spite, could you ever forgive them? Or would you hold on to your anger like armor? Even if it cut you from the inside, I still do not know my answer. What I do know is this: I am no longer anyone's replacement. I am the woman who walked into a burning building, made a devil's bargain, and somehow walked back out with both my mother and my own heart still beating, damaged, scarred, but mine. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: you are allowed to make mistakes in the name of survival. You are allowed to love complicated people and still demand better from them. You are allowed to change your mind about who you are halfway through the story and rewrite the ending. And if the world insists on calling you names, on flattening you into a one-word label, mistress, gold digger, replacement, look straight at them and say, "Watch me outgrow every single box you put me in." Because some of us were not born to be anyone's white moonlight. We were born to be the storm, and storms do not ask for permission to exist. They arrive, they tear down what was rotten, and if you are lucky, they leave behind clean air. So I will ask you one last time, since you have stayed with me this far, if you had to choose between being liked and being free, which would you choose? And are you sure you are living like that answer is true?